Nearly 10 years ago in the class of 2016, this was the #1 overall quarterback in the nation, and also, he was the #3 overall player in the nation. There was only 2 other guys who were ranked ahead of him, so it's more than safe to say he was highly regarded. One of those being Rashawn Gary, who went to Michigan, the other being Dexter Lawrence, who went to Clemson. Right under those 2 outstanding players, you had the man, the myth, the legend himself, Shea Patterson, coming in at exactly 6'1½", 192 pounds. He was a young prodigy. He had D1 teams recruiting him hard when he was in 8th grade. 8th grade! He was supposed to be the next best thing. However, that didn't happen. There's many questions people have been asked about this guy even till this day. But however, it all circles back to the one. And I mean the one big question we're going to try to get to the bottom of in today's video. What really happened to Shea Patterson? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hope all of you having a great day. If not, hope this video can make it a little bit better. Dropping by real quick to say, one of you requested this video, but like I do from time to time, I lost the comment. The reasoning for that is because I write it down in the notes, I forget to say the comment. Yeah, that's a long story short. Whoever requested this video, shout out to you, greatly appreciate it. And if you have any recommendations for videos like this in the future, leave a comment down below. I got those in there before we go on. I know you are like, Matt, shut up. Why did this guy comment, "Hey Mutombo"? It's me again. Who are you calling Mutombo? That is not my name. I'm not even going to get into that too much. Without further ado, let's get into it. You already know, to get into Mr. Shea Patterson's story, we got to throw it all the way back to where things started. Patterson grew up in Toledo, Ohio, but he would move quite a bit throughout his high school career because of his father's job. He moved to Brownsville, Texas, moved to Shreveport, Louisiana, and last but not least, IMG Academy, which for those of you who don't know, you should know, is located in Florida. You don't need me to sit up here and give you the whole boring 5-minute spielio dealio of, oh yeah, this guy was really good in high school. You should know that he was a 5-star recruit, like I showed you in the intro, #3 overall player in the nation. Goes without being said, and if you watch any of our recent videos, you know this, I don't like to talk about the glory days. And let me know in the comment section if y'all want me to in the future. I just feel like it's not that interesting. I would say one of the more interesting things around his high school career is he originally committed to Arizona. He would decommit from them, reopen his recruitment process, and commit and sign with Ole Miss. This was a massive pickup for the Rebels because, and I can't harp on this enough, you're not just getting one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. At the time, you were getting one of the best players in the nation. When he arrived on the campus in his first year there in 2016, he was supposed to redshirt, but the starting quarterback, Chad Kelly, wound up getting hurt late in the season, which means Patterson, he got to see some action. In his first career start against #8 ranked Texas A&M, they upset him 29-28, and Patterson played really good. Was 25 for 42, had 338 passing yards with 2 touchdowns, 1 INT, QBR of 83.3. As a true freshman against a top 10 team in the SEC, that is marvelous. You'll take it. Oh yeah, you got to throw in there, he also had 64 rushing yards that game. Not a bad start to the Shea Patterson experience. However, it would go south rather quickly. In the next game against Vanderbilt, Ole Miss would get stomped 38-17, and Patterson, not his best. Completed less than 50% of his passes, had 200 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 INTs, that's nice, QBR of 24 on the dot. But most importantly, Ole Miss, he lost to Vandy, and anytime you lose to the nerds, it's not a good look. And last but not least, in their final game, since they didn't make a bowl game, they got demolished by Mississippi State 55-20. Shea Patterson, a little shaky again. 27 for 48, 320 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 INTs, QBR less than 50, 50's average. When it was all said and done for his freshman season, in 3 games played, he completed 55% of his passes, had nearly 900 yards, will round up, 6 touchdowns, 3 INTs. Even though they ended the year on a sour note, a 2-game losing streak in which he got blown out in both of the games, fans were hopeful because he showed flashes of greatness. Heading into his sophomore year, 2017, he was named the starting quarterback, and there was a ton of hype surrounding him and the Ole Miss team. You got to remember, we're talking about the 3rd best player in all of high school football and a 5-star quarterback. People are like, all right, we saw what he did as a freshman, but now he's had an entire year under his belt. He should go off. And at first he did go off. He got out to one of the best starts you can ever get out to. I know Ole Miss didn't play the stiff as a competition, but against UT Martin in South Alabama, he had over 900 passing yards in both games combined. But Patterson and Ole Miss hit some bumps in the road because they suffered a 3-game losing streak against Cal, Bama, and Auburn. Against Cal, Patterson, very bad. 26 for 44, 360 passing yards. The passing yards is great, but he had 3 interceptions. Against Bama in one of the worst losses in Ole Miss history, Bama demolished them 66-3. Didn't even complete 50% of his passes, had 0 touchdowns, 2 INTs. But that's Bama, so everybody's like, yeah, whatever, you can overlook that because Bama is the cream of the crop. But against Auburn, still not all too great. He did suffer a knee injury in the LSU game, and just like that, his sophomore season ended. Ole Miss would finish that year 6-6 in 7 games played. Patterson would complete 64% of his passes, had over 2,200 passing yards with 17 touchdowns to 9 INTs. Even to this day, I have a hard time trying to evaluate that season for Shea Patterson. It was interesting. Here's what I'm talking about. Sometimes looked really good, and even when he was throwing the interceptions, he was still throwing for 300 to 400 yards per game. I wouldn't go as far as to call him a gunslinger, but he wasn't scared of throwing picks, and he didn't let them affect him, which is great if you're a quarterback. You got to have a short memory. And here's a fun fact for you. When he got hurt against LSU at the time, he was leading the SEC in total passing yards. The problem with Shea Patterson, and this is really on par with the Ole Miss brand when it comes to quarterbacks, is you just didn't know when, but you knew he was going to have that bad game. If he had 3 great games in a row, you knew upcoming he was going to have a 2 or 3 interception ball game. I don't even want to say either that you didn't know what to expect. It's just, like I said, it's tricky to evaluate. Let me know your thoughts down below if you're an Ole Miss fan, how you felt about, I'm a drawing blank on his name, Shea Patterson, my apologies, in that 2017 season. Here's where things get fascinating. After that season, it was announced that Ole Miss, they would be banned from postseason play. So Patterson was like, that kind of stinks. I want to compete in the postseason. I think I'm going to transfer. I'm going to go elsewhere, and I don't blame him. So he winds up transferring to Michigan. Remember, this is before the transfer portal, so originally he was going to have to sit out a season. But, and I have an astronomically enormously large big but, Patterson petitioned the NCAA. Normally I'd say, 95% of the time, players lose these petitions. But Patterson had a great argument. He stated to the NCAA that he was, and I quote, misled by Ole Miss. He didn't know all these quote-unquote recruitment violations were ongoing, and to make a long story short, not to get all into the nitty-gritty because you really don't care about it, neither do I, they granted him his waiver. He was eligible immediately at Michigan. Or I think a better way of saying it, he was immediately eligible at Michigan. But you get the point. Which I think is fair. He shouldn't have had to sit out. It was great news for Patterson, but it was also great news for the Wolverines. Patterson wasted no time whatsoever. He won the starting quarterback job just like that. And Patterson and Michigan's first game in the 2018 season, they got off to a rough start. They lost to Notre Dame 24-17. Although Patterson didn't have his best performance, I've seen him play much worse. He was 20 for 30 at 230 passing yards with 1 interception, QBR of 65. You're probably thinking, yep, this season's about to go the same way it did at Ole Miss. But just like Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. Patterson and Michigan would bounce back and ran off 10 straight wins. What about that for some resiliency? And they weren't just winning these games. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, they were dominating. They played 3 more ranked teams that year before they played Ohio State and beat all of them by 14 plus points. Patterson was balling out and he was having a great season, but then they ran into old little bro State, and Ohio State, they got the best of them. And I hate it for Shea Patterson because he actually did his part in the game. They put up 39 on offense, but they gave up 62 on defense. 20 for 34, 187 yards, 3 tutties, 1 INT, QBR of 87.7. For those of you who don't remember, that was the Dwayne Haskins game. I mean, dude went off. He had 6 touchdown passes, almost a perfect QBR, had 400 passing yards as well. Michigan would match up with number 10 ranked Florida in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and they got crushed in that one as well. Patterson went 22 for 36, 230, 1 touchdown, 2 INTs, QBR right below 50. All in all, for that season in 13 games played, he completed 65% of his passes, had 2,600 passing yards with 22 touchdowns to only 7 INTs. Not bad. I say not bad, what am I talking about? That's good. If I had to grade that season on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it's like a 6.8, a 7. There were some talks about him potentially heading to the NFL draft early, but he decided to come back for his senior season. And it was another solid/good year for Patterson and the Michigan Wolverines. But as you'll see, and this is some foreshadowing later on in this video, that was Patterson's problem. He was just good at best. Michigan won the games they were supposed to win that year, lost the games they were supposed to lose. Lost to Wisconsin, lost to Penn State, lost to Ohio State, and lost to Alabama. One thing that sticks out is his completion percentage had a major drop-off. He only completed 56% of his passes, had 3,000 passing yards, those increased, had 23 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. But here's an interesting thing to note. I don't even bring this up too much, but his quarterback rating, it was his second worst ever. He was actually technically better at Ole Miss in 2017 than he was at Michigan in 2019. I'm going to say this a bunch more times in this video, so get used to it. He was a good quarterback in college. I don't think there's any denying that. But his biggest problem is NFL does not want good. You have to be great at one thing, bare minimum. And he wasn't. He wasn't the most athletic quarterback. He didn't have the strongest arm. He wasn't the greatest decision maker. He didn't have the greatest accuracy. And I could go on and on and on. You get the point. The way these NFL GMs, teams, and scouts evaluated him is the same way we're talking about him right now. Oh, yeah, he's a good kid. He's a pretty good football player, but nah, not really interested. With that being said, you probably know what I'm about to say next. In the 2020 NFL Draft, he went undrafted. But whoa. Hold on. This is not the end of his story, and we're nowhere close to the end. He'd get picked up by the Kansas City Chiefs as an undrafted free agent, but got waived shortly after. He didn't even get close to making the roster. Here's what Shea Patterson himself had to say about his experience after going undrafted and trying to pick up with a team in the NFL. This is from the Mental Game podcast. I'll leave an entire link to this interview down below in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. Major shout out to their channel.
Definitely didn't expect to not get drafted. So when that happened, I got picked up by the Kansas City Chiefs like a month later after the draft. So it was just a month of just anxiety and stress and just like, what the heck's going on? And then after that, like it was during the COVID year. So like they had Chad Henne, Pat Mahomes, and I think Jordan Tammer as well in the room already, who they were already paying because I signed a free agent deal for no money. It's definitely a business in the NFL. So I went through like 3 months of virtual meetings and then never got to Kansas City because they went from like 90-some to 60-some. So that was tough.
After he got released by the Chiefs, this was a very difficult time for him, and since he had no other teams pursuing him, he got down on himself.
Yeah, I remember when I got let go, there was like a 2.5 month period where I was just completely out of it. My family noticed it. I was getting fat. Sleeping in, not working out. And then just one day I just woke up and it was just like, just kind of decided who I wanted to be and decided that I'm going to go after it with everything I got.
I got a lot of empathy for Shea Patterson here. As a former athlete myself, I can relate 10,000%. It's difficult. For Patterson, you got to understand, this is all he knew. This was his life. This was his livelihood. Football, and guess what? More football. And it's not even like he was some no-name 2 or 3-star recruit. No. He was the man for dang near his entire life. Everyone's telling him how good he is, and I got to give credit to him. He's an extremely humble individual, but he knew, like, all right, yeah, I got a great shot of making it to the NFL. He leaves Ole Miss, has a good career there. Leaves Michigan, has a good stint there as well. So he's thinking, oh, yeah, somebody has to take a chance on me, right? But no one's calling. So he got sad, down on himself, whatever you want to call it, and I'll be the first to tell you, there's nothing wrong with that. But what is wrong with that is staying in that same state. You got to get out of that, and that's what he did. He got up, he looked in the mirror, he said, nah. No way. I can't go out this way. I got to start working hard again and get back to what I know. From all the interviews I watched, it's easy to tell he's a pretty smart guy. He knew his chances in the NFL, they were probably coming to an end, so he had to go elsewhere. That's what he did. He decided to join the CFL in June of 2021. He picked up with the BC Lions. Unfortunately, a couple months after joining them, he got released in September of 2021. Didn't even play a snap. Nearly 2 weeks later, he got picked up by the Montreal Alouettes out of the CFL. Only appeared in 5 games. He was a backup quarterback. He didn't do much of anything. Fast forward time into February 2022, he was drafted first overall. Let me say it again, first overall by the Michigan Panthers in the USFL draft. Sadly, only a couple months after being the first overall pick, he got released in May. Wasn't over yet, though. The New Orleans Breakers would claim him off of the waivers, and then in February 2023, he signed with the Saskatchewan Roughriders out of the CFL, so heading back to the Canadian Football League. Stayed with them a couple of years, and in February of 2025, he picked up with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He did sign a 1-year contract with them, and most recently, in May of 2025, only about a month ago, he got released. If you're wondering why the Michigan Panthers released him after drafting him first overall, it's relatively simple. They went 1-5 when he was playing for them. He only completed, like in college, 60% of his passes, had 4 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. I know a lot of y'all are like, well, there had to be more to it. There's not. He didn't get in any trouble off the field. I hate to say this, but it's a cold, harsh truth. He just wasn't good. I'm talking about in the USFL, not his college days. Just let me clarify. That is the newest and new updates. As when I'm speaking making this video, technically, he's a free agent. From everything I've seen, it looks like he's still trying to pursue football, and I don't think he's going to give up quite just yet. I'd say right now his ceiling is probably maybe he can stick around in the CFL, but that's about it. NFL, completely out of the question. He's nowhere good enough to even be on a roster in the league. I've seen he's dabbled into coaching a little bit, and I know he's still trying to be an athlete, but whenever his athletic days are over, I think he'll be a really good coach. If I had to guess, I'd say he'd probably join Michigan's staff, but who knows? He could join somebody else's. I will say this is one of the more pleasant downfall, quote-unquote, videos, because I love when players don't get in any off-the-field trouble. I don't mean this in a bad way, but when a guy makes it just because he wasn't good enough, I'd much rather that be the case. My reasoning for that is because in Patterson's case, if you don't make it because you're not good enough, that means you did everything in your power to get to the next level. It just wasn't meant to be. I don't think it's no. The worst thing in this life, I've said before, I'm going to say it again, is wasted talent and potential. I don't know how some of these guys that got in trouble and throw their NFL career out the window sleep at night. I know I couldn't. But for a guy like Patterson, he can sleep peacefully knowing, hey, I didn't get in any trouble. I tried my best. It just wasn't meant to be. I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but I would say it's a similar story to Tim Tebow's. Tebow was one of the best college quarterbacks of all time, and he's an outstanding college football player, but his game didn't translate over to the NFL. I know he had that one little miracle playoff run, but I mean as like a career. Same thing with Shea Patterson. I think it is more than fair to say, good college quarterback. I'm not calling him great. He was good at best, but game didn't translate over to the NFL. It is what it is, and also, last thing I'm going to say, he's an extremely humble guy. I was watching some videos of him before, I guess you could say, he quote-unquote fell off when he was in high school. You wouldn't even have known he was a top quarterback recruit. Super humble, has a lot of humility about him, and I love it. He's a great guy, and I know whatever he pursues, he's going to succeed at. To Shea Patterson, if you're somehow, someway seeing this video, my brother, wish you the best of luck. I'm curious. I'm going to know your thoughts down below. But